In April 2025, the global auto industry was rocked by a seismic announcement that sent shockwaves through boardrooms and factory floors alike. President Trump declared a sweeping 25% tariff on all imported cars, a move that instantly redrew the map of international trade and set off alarms across the automotive world. For German giants like Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW, this was a direct hit to their most lucrative export market, the United States, where their premium vehicles have long been symbols of engineering excellence and status. The news triggered panic and urgent strategy sessions in Germany, as their business model, building high-end cars at home and shipping them to the US, was suddenly at risk of unraveling. The tariff threatened to add tens of thousands of dollars to the price of their flagship models, making them uncompetitive overnight and putting their hard-won market share in jeopardy. Stock prices for German automakers plummeted as investors braced for impact, fearing a domino effect that could ripple through the entire sector. The uncertainty spread from boardrooms to factory floors, with German workers fearing layoffs and production cuts if US sales collapsed, threatening thousands of jobs. The tariff wasn't just a financial blow, it was an existential threat to the transatlantic auto trade, a relationship built over decades of cooperation and competition. Executives faced tough choices: absorb the cost, pass it to consumers, or risk losing their foothold in the world's largest car market. Some considered shifting production to the US, while others explored new markets or cost-cutting measures, all searching for a way forward in a suddenly hostile environment. The intricate web of global supply chains, spanning continents and countless suppliers, was suddenly at risk of unraveling, threatening to disrupt not just car makers, but entire economies. For both American and German workers, livelihoods now hung in the balance, as uncertainty clouded the future of jobs, wages, and entire communities. The old rules of global auto commerce had been upended overnight, leaving the industry scrambling to adapt to a new and unpredictable reality. President Trump framed the 25% tariff as a bold, decisive move to protect American jobs and revive the nation's manufacturing sector, which he argued had been neglected for too long. The administration's goal was clear: force foreign automakers to build in the US if they wanted access to the lucrative American market, rather than simply shipping in finished vehicles from overseas. Officials argued that decades of trade imbalance and offshoring had hollowed out American industry, shuttering factories and costing thousands of blue-collar jobs. The tariff, they said, was the stick needed to bring those jobs back home and restore pride in American manufacturing. The message was simple but forceful. If you want to sell cars here, you need to build them here, using American workers and resources. The policy aimed to make importing cars prohibitively expensive, pushing global companies like Volkswagen and BMW to expand their US production lines, invest in new plants, and hire more American workers. Some concessions were made. Imported parts could make up 15% of a car's value without triggering the full tariff, allowing for some flexibility in the complex global supply chain that modern automaking relies on. But the core 25% levy remained, a powerful deterrent against simply importing finished vehicles. German and EU officials condemned the move as protectionist, warning it could spark a tit-for-tat trade war and disrupt the global auto industry, which depends on open markets and international cooperation. For German automakers, the crisis was immediate and urgent. They needed a solution fast to avoid devastating losses and protect their American market share. Political battles in Brussels offered little comfort. The companies themselves had to act quickly and decisively to safeguard their future. The White House had drawn a hard line, and the German auto giants couldn't afford to wait for a diplomatic breakthrough that might never come. The stakes were enormous: adapt to the new rules or risk losing access to their most important and profitable market, the United States. The 25% tariff was a high-stakes gamble with global consequences, sending shockwaves through boardrooms and governments around the world. Instead of fighting back with tariffs of their own or fleeing the market entirely, German automakers chose a third path: negotiation, diplomacy, and strategic compromise. Abandoning the US market was never an option. It was simply too valuable, representing billions in annual sales and a crucial foothold in the world's largest economy. Top executives from Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW flew to Washington for intense behind-the-scenes talks, determined to find common ground. Their pitch was simple but powerful: more investment in US factories in exchange for tariff relief and a stable business environment. They positioned themselves as major American employers, already supporting tens of thousands of jobs, and promised to expand further if the administration worked with them. The message was clear: help us help you create even more American jobs and keep the auto industry thriving on both sides of the Atlantic. The companies offered legally binding commitments to build new plants, increase US production, and invest in local communities. The logic was straightforward. Investing billions in new factories was ultimately cheaper and more sustainable than paying endless tariffs that could cripple their competitiveness. This build where you sell strategy, once a long-term goal, suddenly became an urgent necessity for survival. By June, reports suggested the US government was open to compromise, perhaps phased tariffs or new incentives for local production, or quotas tied directly to the scale of German investment in American jobs and infrastructure. The German automakers showed remarkable adaptability, trading some German production for continued US access and rethinking their global supply chains. The new reality was clear: partnership and investment, not protest, would secure their future in America's lucrative market. The crisis had accelerated a fundamental shift in global auto strategy, forcing companies to localize production and deepen international cooperation. German companies were now betting on America, by building in America and by forging a new kind of transatlantic alliance. Volkswagen led the charge, seeing the crisis as both a threat and an opportunity. Already invested in Chattanooga, VW proposed a major expansion, including building Audi models in the US for the first time. Talks even included a new joint Audi-Porsche plant, a landmark investment in American manufacturing. For the Trump administration, this was a political win. For VW, it was a lifeline. The financial pain was real. VW's profits plunged 37% in early 2025, and Porsche's sales forecast dropped. The numbers made it clear: the old export model was unsustainable. VW's new vision was to build German-engineered cars in America by Americans. The goal transformed from foreign importer to domestic manufacturer in the eyes of US policymakers. For Volkswagen, this bold pivot was now essential for survival. Mercedes-Benz and BMW, already deeply rooted in the American South, doubled down on their US investments. BMW's Spartanburg, South Carolina plant, their largest worldwide, ramped up SUV production to shield against tariffs. Mercedes-Benz expanded its Alabama plant, adding new models like the GLC SUV to its US lines. These moves protected high-volume vehicles from tariffs and demonstrated commitment to American jobs. The southern US plants became strategic lifelines, not just political gestures. Mercedes-Benz even scrapped its 2025 earnings guidance, warning of severe financial impact if tariffs persisted. Shifting production was a defensive move to protect profits and future-proof against trade volatility. The German Autobahn of the South became the new center of gravity for these automakers. Expanding in America was now their best insurance policy. For American car buyers, the tariff meant one thing: higher prices. Automakers couldn't absorb a 25% cost hike, so sticker prices for German imports soared. As German brands raised prices, domestic and other US-built foreign brands followed suit. The result? New cars, especially luxury models, became more expensive across the board. Some niche German models disappeared from showrooms, reducing consumer choice. The upside? More local jobs as German automakers expanded US factories and supplier networks. The trade-off: higher prices and fewer options, but more manufacturing jobs in the South. For buyers, the landscape had changed, possibly for good. The standoff was a clash of two goals: America's push for domestic jobs and Germany's need to protect its market. The US saw tariffs as a way to force investment and revive manufacturing. For the administration, every new factory was a policy win. German automakers, focused on profit and market access, chose pragmatism over confrontation. Their solution: invest billions in US plants to secure their future. By adapting, they gave the White House the jobs it wanted in exchange for continued access. The relationship became transactional, jobs for market share. In the end, both sides found common ground in mutual self-interest. The new era, less about trade wars, more about strategic compromise. Industry experts agreed. The tariffs brought immediate pain and long-term uncertainty. The unpredictability of US trade policy made it hard for automakers to plan or invest. Many companies, including Ford and Mercedes-Benz, suspended financial forecasts for 2025. Analysts predicted higher prices for consumers and lower profits for German automakers. The short-term result? A lose-lose for buyers and manufacturers, with only the US government collecting tariff revenue. Some argued the tariffs would ultimately strengthen US manufacturing, giving an edge to companies already building in America. The long-term outcome? Possibly a more resilient US auto sector, but at a higher cost to consumers. The debate over whether the trade-off is worth it continues. The transatlantic auto industry now faces a fork in the road. If negotiations succeed, tariffs could be replaced by quotas and investment incentives, stabilizing the market. This would allow German automakers to expand US production and keep prices in check. If talks fail, the 25% tariff becomes permanent, forcing German brands to cut imports and focus only on US-built models. The result? Higher prices, fewer choices, and the risk of a wider trade war. The crisis has forced a rethink of globalization in the auto sector. German automakers now see a large US manufacturing footprint as the best defense against protectionism. Billions in new investment are a bet on continued access to American buyers. The coming months will decide whether this leads to a revitalized US industry or a fractured global market. One thing is clear: the US-German auto relationship will never be the same.